Time to get up and make the coffee. This is the last full day of my vacation in the tab. Yesterday we went out and did a RC crawl and I broke some parts. So I'll talk about that too. Nice sunny morning. As you can see, I got the bed fully open and I just laid my sleeping pad this way for the heck of it to see how that goes. And it wasn't too bad last night. I think it's supposed to be nice and sunny for my last day. Figures. Need to get some water out of the back of the truck. Everybody said this camper shell was old man stuff, but I think it looks pretty good on a Tacoma. Plus, I love being able to just throw everything back here. Got dirty clothes back here, got my water, chuck box, the generator's locked back here, chair, extra fuel and water, and an axe. And by the way, I'm part of the 100,000 mile club already. I'm sitting at 137,000 right now. Truck's been flawless so far. Knock on wood. If you do set your table up like this, just make sure you don't open this door too hard. You might end up hitting it on one of these corners or put it away in your vehicle. Whenever I cook in here, I make sure that these shades are down and the screen is up. I don't want them melting for some reason. I think it's weird that this stops and locks in high. Usually it should stop and lock in low and allow you to turn it high. You got to push in to get it to low. I think, right? I'd say this little trailer has been pretty efficient. I mean, I do these weekend trips and I know that propane lasts me 4 or 5 trips on a 20-gallon propane tank. Since this is the last day, I think I'll do absolutely nothing. Usually on my trips, I'm always go, go, go to the last day and I pack up and head out. This time I'm gonna do nothing on my last day. Probably cook some actual dinner this time. And I'll go over some of the ins and outs of this trailer after a whole week. I know some people do multi-weeks and probably live in their tab, but not enough people post about it or put it up on the YouTube. And a lot of people would like to know about that, I think. The real world applications. Alright, we're gonna start with a little bit of toast today. Camping hack, keep everything in a plastic bag with a plate, that way none of the bugs and junk get on there. I never start the heat typically on this until I'm right when I'm ready to cook. I don't want to burn that surface on these non-stick camping pans since they heat up so fast. So we're going to butter our bread, and since I'm Italian, that means olive oil. Just kidding, I didn't get any butter because I probably wouldn't have used it all up. What I like to do on the one side is I add this Western style brand high mountain seasonings, trail dust. Pretty good on toast, eggs, whatever else, steaks. I will say cooking with the olive oil as far as toast goes gives you a nice light crispy crust. Then we got to use up the rest of our bacon since it is the last day of the trip. The key to getting a really crispy bacon, and this works out good for these thin camp pans, you start on no heat and let the bacon warm with the pan. Then you get a really crispy bacon. And you keep flipping and turning. And then you allow it to dry off, of course. Get all the grease off. Now, I know what you're going to think on this. This is a weird breakfast. but you'll see in a minute. It is the last day of camp, and I like to use up everything I can. So we're going to use up this beef fried rice for breakfast with this remaining bacon grease. Alright, now I'm going to add a little milk to our eggs. I don't know if anybody does that, but it makes them really soft and fluffy and good. Somehow we're going to scramble these eggs with a spoon. Yeah, it looks like it worked. Now this is going to be kind of tricky and difficult. I'm going to have to keep moving this pan because that hot spot will be right in the center. And I don't know if this is possible, but we're going to try to do omelets Japanese style here. Or sort of, kind of. Now granted, this isn't the correct way, but it's just how I have to do it on this camp pan. I'm going to try to roll this edge back. One stage at a time here. It's difficult to make a Japanese omelet at home, let alone in this pan, and this is completely incorrect, but you get the idea. Now when I get this done, this isn't going to split down the middle and pour out. I don't like my eggs runny like that anyway. Looks like a nice little egg burrito. And there we go. Not too bad. Let's see how those eggs came out. Nice and fluffy and light. I bet you this bacon fried rice is pretty good. So much better than the other night. Wow. And you know what goes better with bacon fried rice? More bacon. Our trailed seasoned toast. That's a pretty good breakfast. And the damage report and the aftermath of the scale crawl event. So what happened was our buddy there put his little winch hook right in here. It looks like two spikes. And when I took off, the line got caught in the tire, wound around it, stopped the wheel, and the spike itself came in and totally ripped my brand new tire apart. Man, that sucks. These ain't cheap either. See if you can hear the clicking going on in here. And that's down in here in the portal box. Inside this, there's a drive shaft that runs out to a gear and a lower gear that reducts down to the lower end to lift this axle up a little higher. And when that stopped, that power came through, and these little guys have so much torque that inside it totally blew up all the teeth on those gears inside, and those are metal gears. It's crazy how much power and torque these little RC cars have these days. It's time for the last final cat meal. We're gonna rub that in real good. Then I'm gonna let her sit for about an hour. While that thing's sitting and all the spices are soaking in, I gotta get a fire ready so we can cook on it. The easy way. I always use a easy start log. That always keeps my fires going for a long time. It's a little bit of cheating, but who cares? End up putting my charcoals back here so we don't cook on that thing. That way when I'm done cooking, I push everything together, use up the coals and the wood for the campfire. We're going to use the whole bag of charcoal because I don't need to take it home or make a mess in the back of the truck. Sometimes these grill grates are too tall, so I'm going to need a little extra heat going. I'm going to try to be a little quiet. I don't want to bother my neighbors, but it is pretty nice when it comes Sunday and Monday. There is like nobody here now. All them spots are cleared. Just have our neighbor and his nice Airstream up here. Now that the fire's gone, like camping with Steve would say, it's time for a step 2. I'm not sure the name. It's like a Kogan's or Coghlan's collapsible fire poker. This thing has been awesome for a couple years. I used to use sticks all the time. Put this nasty grate up and help burn off anything that's on there for a little bit. Our cheap store-bought grates so we don't get any rusted nasty stuff all over our meat. Oh, look at that thing. We get a little mixer out of this. We're going to get the charcoal taste and a little bit of that juniper down in there. Juniper's not my favorite to cook with, but it's camping. So I never time this, and camp cooking is almost impossible to get right, especially with these weird heights and temperature fluctuations with the wind. But I'm gonna sear the living crap out of this thing. I want it charred. After that, I'll kind of kick them coals down and use the residual heat just to keep that thing going. Well, our phone overheated, so I had to take a second here to try to cool it down, but we're about ready to pull this off. Oh yeah, it looks good. I'm hoping we got this right around medium. I'm going to let that cool off a little bit. I'm going to put it inside that bag, let it rest, and hope all those juices stay inside that steak. We're literally going to give this steak the meat sweats. Alright, now I'm going to break this fire up. Move all these coals in so I don't leave them behind. I like to leave a nice clean fire pit when I leave. It's crazy, my phone was getting so hot that the casing between the front and the back started to melt apart. See how this steak came out. It's been about 10 minutes sweating it out in the bag. Looks nice and juicy. I'm not real hungry up here at altitude, so I'm not gonna have any side dishes, just the steak, and I gotta use up some of this guac salsa. Let's see. Dang, I cooked it a smidge over again. I wanted it medium. It looks like it's probably close to medium well. Not bad, super tender. Dang, just over. Even though that was overcooked, it's melting in my mouth like a filet mignon. Wow. That is so good. But that's why I like to char my ribeyes. Gets that fat all cooked up and it's fully edible. Perfect night. The last morning here. It's pack-up day, unfortunately. It's been a pretty good week. It's too bad it has to end. Too bad this journey can't go on permanently. Always seems like a sad day when you gotta head back to reality. But I'm fortunate enough to have some pretty long weekends, so I'll be back at it here in a couple weeks. So before I leave, I want to go over some of the real world usages on propane, power, and water in this little trailer for one person, just being me. Now, I'm very conservative on my water, power, and gas usages, being used to camping, so I'm kind of minimal that way. Even though I'm on vacation, I go a little bit overboard, use a little extra. There's some stuff I want to use up before I head out on the next trip, so when it comes to water, I left home with a full tank, and that's 20 gallons. I'll use the tabs outside shower and fill up my 5-gallon jug for dishwashing and hand washing outside. Of course, hand washing inside too. I used that first 20 gallons about midway point at 5 days in. When I hit the state park, I used that to fill the water tank back up with another 20 gallons. So that's 40 total gallons over this 9 days. I've yet to take my final shower this morning, but I'll show you where we're at with water. We're about just over half. So not too bad. 30 gallons of water over 9 days. That gave me 5 quick showers. That's a really light rinse everywhere. Stop it, shut down the shower, suds up, and then rinse off real quick. More than enough. The next consumable is propane. I have a 20-gallon propane tank that came with the tab on board. I started out with just about 20 gallons of propane. I ran the tab stove about 5 of those days to make coffee. The propane was used to obviously heat the water every day. And I also ran my heater every day. And I kept the heater right around 73, 74 degrees. Now the heater's not running too crazy this trip because it's not super cold. But it usually kicked on around 9 o'clock at night and kicks off about 8 in the morning. In 9 days, I only used about 10 pounds of propane. That's half of that 20-pound tank. I'd say that's pretty good. Now, as far as power goes, that's a little tough to figure out with charging on and off. A little bit of the truck charging, the solar charging. I was on shore power one day, which I really didn't even need it for charging because I was charged up. And knowing from my typical use on a weekend, I would say power-wise I used, from what I could monitor, that's pretty typical, while running the refrigerator the whole time, using some lights, leaving my fan on low, I probably consumed about, I would say, somewhere around 500 amp hours of battery power in 9 days. I have a 100 amp hour lithium battery on board, and of course the tab solar. I have an external 100 watt solar panel. I also have a 1200 watt capacity Blue Eddy power station for backup, and my small Honda 2200i generator. Of course, the majority of this week, it has been cloudy. And a few of these spots I parked in were not in optimal solar conditions. I was parked away from the sun or in a lot of trees. So I wasn't getting a whole lot of solar power this trip. I used my generator twice to fully charge up my Blue Eddy power station, which is like having another 100 amp hour battery on board this trailer. Although the conversion from AC back to DC, you do lose about 40-50% in that translation. In 9 days, I had to use my generator twice to recharge that battery. So I ran that generator for about 3 hours the whole trip. So generator-wise, I don't even know if I even used 2 gallons of fuel, maybe a gallon at that. I didn't even have to put fuel in the generator, so I would say that's pretty good. Now, usually if I'm facing the direction of the sun using the tab solar or I have my external panel out, this trailer will run indefinitely as long as it isn't too hot inside and stressing out that refrigerator. So I'd say that was pretty dang good for 9 days. As far as the cassette toilet goes, I used it the whole time for number 1 and 2, mainly number 2. And when I leave here today, that'll be the 5th time I had to dump the cassette toilet this whole trip. So also not too bad, and it's pretty easy to do. As far as gray water dumping goes, I only dumped that 1 time so far, and today I will dump the remainder. So all in all, I would say for 9 days out on the road, that's pretty efficient, especially using it a lot, you know. Of course, if I really needed to get minimalist, we could cut that number in half pretty easily. Take a couple less showers, stay in a sleeping bag to stay warm inside, not use the heat, some extra power. But what fun would that be? Could you full-time in it? I'm not ready to go home. I think I could live in it. I'm serious. I don't even know why I'd go home. I think a few months of this, I'd probably get tired of it and want to go home. But I definitely think if you had a pickup truck and a camper shell and a way to store all your extra junk, yeah, you could full-time in this. It may be a little tight with a couple doing that, but that all depends on where you came from camping-wise, you know? Maybe you had a small teardrop, or you don't mind being in close quarters. So it's definitely totally doable. So that's about all, folks. I think I'm going to end my vacation series with that. I'll be back at it again here in about 2 to 3 weeks, just for my normal weekends. Now it's time for me to pack up and head on home, back to the old trusty dusty desert at 105 to 110 degrees. It's gonna suck for the next month or two. See you all in a few weeks.